2022, the annual conference on experimentation by VWO, a full funnel experimentation platform. Today, we have with us Mark Kilens, who is the CMO at Airmeet, also very much evident from the just freshly installed Neo lights in the background, because Mark's going to announce some really cool things tomorrow, that is on 12th of October. So Mark's here, and of course, many of you might already know Mark. He was, of course, with his team, was the person behind HubSpot Academy and VW and Drift Insider. Isn't that true, Mark?
That is true. Yeah, thank you for having me. Good to see you all.
Yeah, even
we want to make this a very interactive session too. So please get your questions ready. Hard questions are what I look for. So the harder the question, the better.
Sure enough. And we have Jan with us, who is the director for Europe and Latin America at VWO. So he will be moderating this fireside chat. So with that, I'll just jump off the stage, guys. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a very interesting session, Mark, because you know what happened? I was on the way to the airport and then suddenly the train stopped because of some technical problems. So I'm literally sitting here on the floor of a train station next to the airport of Barcelona. So don't be surprised if you hear these announcements here. This is due to that. This is real life. So that shows this is not recorded, anything like that. But thank God I've got a good iPhone connection here. And if I disappear, then the stage is all yours, and you will know what has happened and somebody cut it off. Good to have you here, Mark. How are you?
I am well. That sounds like quite the adventure. So yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll take this in a completely different direction if you get cut off. We don't know, audience. We don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, I don't. I'm not concerned at all about this. I'm sure that then you go ahead and you go with the flow, I would say. Mark, I have one goal for today. I'm trying to get a sneak preview information about what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I'm a little bit concerned that I will have to wait till tomorrow, but everybody is really excited. Do you think we have a chance? Is there anything that we could, let's say, tease you into giving us a sneak preview of what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, maybe throughout the conversation. Maybe throughout. I'll
Okay,
just say that we're announcing
we'll
seven new things tomorrow. So I hope you folks can tune in. And yeah, if you do anything with live webinars, events like this, I definitely don't think you should miss it.
Yeah, I think so. Mark, I think we are, I mean, we don't know each other too long, but we are kind of already best friends, only just for the reason that you're also very deep into experimentation, and you are the living example how important it is and how experimentation can drive successful businesses. Can you, I mean, it's 17 years that I've been part of your students when you were driving HubSpot Academy. So I know a little bit from first-hand experience of what we're doing, but 17 years that have been exciting, and the headline has always been hyper growth in a certain way. So what is your takeaway? If you look back, what have been the most exciting moments and what has driven your career so far?
For me, it kind of always comes down to your personal values or principles. So two of mine would be always be learning and never settle. So when you think about the theme of today, you know, VWO, I'm always experimenting in my life, not just at work, but in almost every aspect, if you will, right? Because that's how you can really accelerate your learning, if you will, and create these feedback loops. So some of the proudest moments are the actual experiments that we did early days at HubSpot, 2010, 11, to prove out that HubSpot Academy was something that was needed, something that the customers really found valuable and loved, and was something that could really help change the trajectory of HubSpot's growth and sustainable growth. So we did, I mean, talk about experimentation, everything from your traditional stuff that, you know, Sarah was just talking about, to experimenting with events like this. We would run actually a lot of just live training and live workshops, live events to see what messaging would land, what resonates better. Does this new framework work, right? And some of it was more scientific, some of it was less scientific, right? So there's that piece. But I think the general mindset I have is this belief of never settling, always be learning, everything could always be better. And the way you do that is through experimentation.
Right. I I assume that in the course of the years, with the different career station you had, and you met different companies with a different context and different organizations. Were all of those equally prepared to go this, let's say, to go with you this path of never settling in and embrace experimentation, or did you also sometimes have to fight for it?
Luckily for me, those two companies, HubSpot and Drift, and now Airmeet, they all have this very heavy belief around experimentation. For me, it came from just my natural, upbringing. My parents. I've always been this kind of entrepreneur. I've always tried to try things. Fun stories. I built a home snowmaking machine. Anyone make snow at home? I don't know. Let me know if you want to know the answer how to make snow at home and the questions. By the way, please make this engaging. I think I can see the Q&A. So let me know. But yeah, I mean, I experimented with how to make snow at home for 3-4 years when I was 9 years old, 10 years old, and then I was able to figure it out, and that led me down this whole other kind of small business path.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always been part of me, and I think for growth today, and especially in this economy when efficiency is so important, but also not sacrificing customer engagement and customer experience, you have to be running a lot of experiments. I was, chatting with you, Jan, like your website, no matter how big or small it is, you should always be testing something. Your website should be a living and breathing thing. And really, like, your life is one just big experiment. No one really knows what the hell's going on, right? Like if we're just living life and you're just trying things. Like look at your today, right? Like at the end of the day, you could say you were experimenting with travel. So I think
there's one exception. I think there's one exception. How often have you been married, Mark, if I may ask? Is that the only thing that you can't experiment with? So that is where you have to make a short bet, and then there it is.
Oh no, you definitely experimented with marriage. No, I've been married since 2015. Yeah, I have 2 kids now. So no, I mean I just think it's a really important thing to focus on and practice.
Yeah. Right. Now, these were 2 past very exciting stations. HubSpot, one of my favorite companies, I must say. I would say I'm now suffering under the competitor. I won't drop a name here, but I'd love to go back to HubSpot. But now you're at Airmeet. You're the CMO at Airmeet, and I can't imagine there's any other company that is so with a product there that is so needed and so necessary and so, I don't know, dynamically evolving, which is remote meetings, remote connections, team building, education, and everything remotely. I mean, we all been thrown into of remote connections and with Zoom and with Google Meet and so on. What is the particular spicy thing that Airmeet makes it different? I mean, I know it a little bit, but if you wrap this up, so what is Airmeet's USP against these very known other competitors who are competing platforms for remote connections?
I think it's a few things, but I mean, at the end of the day, like it's about connection, right? At the end of the day, my last 15 years has been very focused on creating content. Content's great. Content, you can't deny how important content is. And now people are saying, well, media is important. I think they're kind of interchangeable, right? To some degree, right? But for me, it's content is like a one-way type of thing, right? You're not being able to experience it together, most likely. But when you do something like this, we're all experiencing this right now live together. And that's where I think live is more important than ever before in B2B. It's always been important, I think, in human life, but like when you share a live experience with one another and you can actually engage with one another, right? Like I have a gripe right now with like, GoToWebinar, just because ironically, I was using GoToWebinar back when I was 2010 at HubSpot, and that was kind of best in class at the time. And like I was trying to engage with the audience, interact with them, even see them, and it's hard, right? So with what we're doing at Airmeet, and you think about the experimentation we do within our product and on our websites and whatnot, it's all about this premise of joining together. How do we get people to join together, either online, either in person, through new technology that you can use in person to get people to join together. or to the extreme, maybe trying to get the in-person and online audience to join together. I think that's much harder these days, and it doesn't really work as well. That's like the classic maybe way people think of hybrid. But in my estimation, it's all about this engagement. But really, what does engagement mean? It's about connecting with one another, right? So that's why I'm asking you folks questions. Like, what questions do you have about experimentation for me? What questions do you have about anything really? Because that's how I learn, right? I've always said that people who learn together grow together. And one of the best ways to learn together is to do it synchronously, live, versus recorded or anything like that. So that's kind of our general thesis and our value. I don't want to talk about Airmeet today. This is more about, how I can hopefully teach you folks listening some things about things you can try right now to experiment. One thing that we did with Airmeet recently, Jan, is we did this huge experiment on our homepage. I think a homepage is a place you got to be running at least 1 or 2 tests every quarter. Again, it depends how much traffic you get, depends on what you're doing, but at a minimum, your homepage gets the most amount of traffic, number one. Number two, you're most likely going to be shipping new things, trying things out on a pretty regular basis, no matter what stage your company's at. So the fact is, your homepage is such a valuable, digital place for you to engage your audience, that I'm shocked that more companies don't focus on the homepage as a testing ground. So anything from the hero image that we did at Airmeet to decide what is the best call to action, basically, what's the best offer for people visiting the homepage, to actually trying to start conversations with people on your homepage through chatbots and live chat. Like, there's just so much you can do to try to captivate and engage that audience on your homepage. I think it's a very underutilized thing. I mean, Sarah was talking about some of this in detail in her last talk, but homepage is everything in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I'm also surprised how often we meet the same homepage again and again and again. After weeks, it's still the same. What is the reason that you see? Is that, let's say, a lack of knowledge about the simplicity, or let's say of the feasibility? Do people think that this is just taking too much effort, or what do you think is the reason for that?
As many reasons, really dependent, right? One is a skill set thing, one is a focus thing, one is a cross-team collaboration thing, meaning like, if you want to test new messaging on the homepage, that's probably going to come from product marketing. But more than likely, either the demand gen team, the creative team, it owns the homepage. Like, who owns the homepage at the end of the day? I mean, I would argue like the CMO owns the homepage. So she or he should be the one trying to coordinate the effort of what to test, what not to test. But at the end of the day, it's a focus thing, I think. The hardest thing in marketing these days is focus, because you could do so much at any time. Sales is kind of like, no, I need to create pipeline, be in control of my book of business, and I need to close this potential business into revenue. I mean, yes, there's nuance there, of course, with focus, but with marketing, it's like, well, I could do this channel, I could do that, I could create this software, I could do that, I could do this, I could change this position, I could do all these things.
Yeah,
it's like,
you can do everything.
How do you pick what's most important,
Yeah, no, that's a big one thing that you decided not too long ago was the redesign of Airmeet's website, right? So, which is always, I'm not talking about, let's say, some minor things. It was not a full redesign, I think, but a substantial redesign that you said. So how did you approach that? Did you run plenty of experiments way before that and tried out different concepts, and then you delivered it like a package? How was your approach to that, to redesign?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think, when you're looking to do any type of like major website redesign, it's one of the best times to do testing, to do experimentation, because you will hopefully reduce the cycles of having to either make the same mistake or redesign, re-engineer a page, a flow, whatever, down the road, right? So you're proving out your hypotheses during the time in which you are redesigning. So for us, to your point, one place where we did a lot of testing is actually on landing pages that are being that are getting visits. We're driving traffic from these landing pages from paid search and social, because there's something to be said about like, the page they land on and how you can control the audience. So that's one way I think about experimentation, is like, not just like what you're testing and why you're testing it, but who are you testing it with? Because at the end of the day, like Airmeet sells to B2B marketers, event leaders, and HR leaders. Those are kind of three different personas, three different buying personas. So if we're doing a test for one of them, it doesn't mean that that test is going to work for the other ones, especially when you think about messaging or offers or stuff like that. So I'm sure others have shared today, or you have great resources at VWO on like how to structure your experiments. But I think one of the biggest things we focus on, that I focused on in the past, is always like, who are you trying to test the hypothesis against, and make sure you really understand that. And then does that experiment, or which experiment is best to test that against, right? So for us, it's a lot of message testing. It's both scientific in terms of like what is getting more opens, clicks. I think email is actually a great channel to do experimentation as well. I'm sure you folks have talked about that. Email is also a great channel to get a direct click, so you can control, again, the audience a bit. Email to click to landing page or whatever page you're sending to the website. So yeah, it's more about like the holistic experience. And then I think a lot of experimentation, what I've seen, also tends to sometimes fall off at marketing. The best experimentation is when marketing is also letting sales know. It could be one salesperson, or it could be a larger sales team. Hey, we're running this test. It's more middle of the funnel. This is what we're testing. You're going to get some leads, or some really high intent hand raising leads from this. As a heads up, here's how you should maybe be thinking about treating them differently because of this experiment. So it's like that collaboration with sales is also super important. I also just don't see a lot of times that happens, because again, a lot of people think experimentation is just like inside this demand gen function, inside just maybe someone doing CRO, when it's much bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, Sarah just said it. I mean, it's really it's a team sport. It is definitely a team sport, and you get the most effective conversion rate optimization program by playing in a team. I am always surprised when we come to a situation when we talk to people who are considering to launch CRO and they are about to redesign. I often hear, yeah, it's a good idea. We would love to do this, but we first have to redesign our page. And I'm freaking out that I'm really heading into a redesign project, and then afterwards they want to start polishing and correcting and so on. But anyway, you have simply always had experimentation of like a pillar in your roles, and you experimented and never took it as is, but continuously evolved. And what is it doing? We notice sometimes the difference between experimenting on the front end, let's say on the public area of a website, and then within the behind login, so to say, where which often doesn't get so much experimental attention, because it's a smaller part. But is this still to come? Is this something that's going to happen in the future, that we see more private areas and account areas? And for instance, in your case, the learning experience, is experimentation part of your product development as well?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think the answer there is pretty obvious. Yes. I definitely am not a product expert by any means. Product, marketing, yes, but product management, no chance. I mean, to me, it's the balance of scientific, like very, quantifiable metrics-based experimentation versus the more qualitative experimentation that you can also do. I think most people listening is probably focused on more the quantitative, and I love the quantitative stuff as well. But to me, it's all about like, what are you trying to change? Are you trying to change a leading indicator? Are you trying to change a lagging indicator, or both? I don't know, Jan, like how often does that come up, I guess in VW, like because to me, those are very different things. Like with HubSpot Academy, yeah, we were trying to change some like leading indicators around like testing of what content or topics resonate the most with the audience, what format is going to be the best to train people, engage them with content, et cetera, et cetera. Again, a little bit less quantitative, more qualitative to some degree. But really, the lagging indicator that we were trying to understand and influence and measure is retention and product adoption, and run tests and experiments to say, hey, if we gave someone a 3-week experience of how to use this product better, will this actually affect the adoption of said product with all else being equal, right? So I think you have to really ask yourself again, like what metric or metrics are you trying to influence, and like because every, it's the classic saying, every action has a reaction, right? So it's like, what's the downstream effect?
Yeah. You mentioned initially a couple of minutes ago the interactivity in our audience and so on. I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't see a single question here. So I would like to encourage anybody here who's, there's not a single question here. So here's what I'm going to suggest here. The first interesting question, right? The first interesting question, I promise I'm going to invite you for a pizza in your home office, right? So you come up with an interesting question. You're going to leave your details afterwards to us, and we're going to ship a really rich, tasty pizza there. And I mean it. We did this before, and let's see if hungry people are in the audience who might feel in the mood of coming up. But it needs to be an interesting question. You and I have to decide if it's worth a pizza. Okay. So we're gonna do that. But
it could be like how to make a snowmaking machine at home. I'll give you the answer to that.
Okay, well, that's probably even more interesting than the pizza could be. Mark, I mean, you are now at a company that is dealing with compared to any other product, a very new product, you could say. Meeting remotely, it all exists since Skype taught us the first steps and so on. But now, as a mass product, it is just happening now, which means that there's probably experimentation beyond the digital channel happening. There is experimentation with completely new product features and so on and so forth. So how does that work at Airmeet? So is there, let's say, a regular idea generation mechanism, then you throw it at some part of your audience and try it out in user groups? So how does experimentation on the product development side actually look like?
It's a great question. It's a question that I really can't answer because I don't really do too much like traditional product development. What I will say is I'm very much involved on understanding the market, right? As a CMO, you really need to be the person to help guide the market. Latney, the CMO of Sixth Sense, really coined the term the chief market officer, not the chief marketing officer. It's the chief market officer. And I really love that. And from my point of view, it's like I'm trying to unite all of the other executives around a go-to-market, right? That's going to successfully make the business revenue and profit in the long term, right? It can't just generate revenue. It's got to create, economic endurance and viability for the business. So it starts really with working with the product leader of Vikas and saying, hey, we have this hypothesis around something our customers needs. How quickly can we validate that with customer proof? And that's why, when you think about digital experiments, a traditional digital type experiment on your homepage or somewhere else, the reason those are great is because you're directly going to the customer so fast, right? So when you think about product development, I always say, and I learned this from my time at HubSpot, I learned this from David Cancel, who was the chief product officer at HubSpot. He was the CEO of Drift for a while, co-founder of Drift. The closer you are to your customers, the better it's always going to be. So even before you maybe even launch an experiment, you might want to just quickly ask 3, 4, 5 people, a customer or a prospect, whoever it might be. Again, it goes back to the who you're trying to run this experiment for, to validate that is this even a good experiment, right? You might have in your mind, some of them are obvious, right? Some experiments are obvious, but some, in your mind, that might not be that obvious, right? And when it comes to building a product or new messaging, pricing and packaging, great thing to experiment. We just did this, and hint, maybe that's some of the stuff that's coming out tomorrow. Very, very new pricing and packaging, might be the best in the industry. Don't want to spoil too much, but the point is, you have to think about, again, who would I test this with, right? When you go back to pricing and packaging, great thing to experiment with. How do you contain that? I think that's where, again, a relationship to Sarah's point around the marketing team being involved. It's not just the marketing team. The entire company, from CS to sales to product, we were all in it together when we were testing this new pricing and packaging out. Was it like a true scientific experiment? Not quite. It was more qualitative, I will say that, but nonetheless, I still think it's an experiment. But then when the new page launches tomorrow, will we run experiments on that? Heck yeah, we're going to run experiments on that. There's going to be a ton of experiments on that new page. Another great page to test things out on. So yeah, I think it's just a constant evolution, Jan,
Yeah, I can see that.
In Jan at this
and you
because
mentioned.
seems like your pizza and
I'm
your
sorry.
snowmaker machine offer really worked out. We've gotten in several interesting questions from people. So
Okay.
let me just unmute Noora, who has sent her question. Noora, you're unmuted. You can now ask your question over the audio directly to Mark.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hello. So my question was concerning content. You mentioned that content and marketing are really important for experimentation. And I work within a bigger agency that does SEO and marketing and advertising for digital online customers. And I always struggle with explaining that content experimentation does not equal SEO optimizations. So I was wondering what your take on that is.
Yeah, your take is definitely accurate. I don't think content is definitely content is not just SEO driven. Right? Content goes back to the who. Content is all about like creating some type of reaction feeling within within the said consumer of the content, right? So it's like, how am I using this asset? And content is such a broad term, just like community. So you could be saying, well, is this an ad? Is this an ebook? Is this a video? Is this a class? People argue maybe this is even content. But the question really is, first defining like what you're trying to better understand. So one thing that I definitely learned from my past companies is like the problem statement definition is so important. Getting extremely clear and crisp in defining the problem hypothesis and agreeing to that, right? So if you're at an agency, I think the most amount of time is the pre-production work that you can spend with your clients, and this goes for non-agencies too, just people at Airmeet, for example. We just went through this, is spending more time on the pre-production before the creation, before the event, before the big launch, and nailing that, because it will make what happens when the things do start to kind of get created or happen live so much easier. But for some reason, I find from my past, and I feel like I'm getting better at this though, if you don't spend enough time really pre-experiment, pre-creating that piece of content, getting really good at defining the brief, defining what success theoretically should look like or could look like, then like you're asking yourself, oh, why are we doing this, right? So that might be part of the answer there. It's like you got to just get a little bit tighter on who are you trying to experiment with this piece of content, why you're trying to do it, what are you trying to experiment, and isolating it down, right? So in my past, like we would isolate it down based off of like, would a live type of experience be better, or would more people consume pre-recorded, right? Because like at the end of the day, we didn't know, like it was so early on. So we did both. Like, all right, we'll have a live 3-part session on this, and we'll have pre-recorded content as well. So like that's like a leading indicator to a metric. So then the metric then was like, okay, depending on who went to the live stuff or the pre-recorded, and we were trying to isolate these two audiences, right? Because if they cross-pollinate, it gets tricky. We were trying to determine, again, which had a bigger effect on product adoption. So like, some of this is it's never probably perfect, right? The most perfect experiment is when you can fully control, and that's almost impossible. Even today with the internet, you can't really fully control your experiments because of third-party cookies and blockers and ads and all this crap, right? So like you do your best, but the point is like we got really specific and you got really clear on what you're trying to figure out, and you write it down and you agree to it, and you try not to deviate during the test.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
so much.
I couldn't agree more. Mark, what do you think? Is that worth a pizza? I think it's worth a pizza. It was a good question. I really liked it. I think that is
one
the
more
first
question,
pizza to
though,
go.
Jan.
So
She
There's
she
one more
gets
from
it.
Tender.
Gets it. Oh yeah, she gets it.
It is not. If there are more questions, I'm ready to pay more pizza. Right. So please do drop me an email to jan@vwo.com and leave your details and tell me whether it's quattro formaggi or diavolo or whatever it is your preferred type of pizza. Okay, there's another question, people.
Yes, I come back to you, Jan, after I take up the next question from Whitney Gilbert. I've unmuted you so you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi. So
Hello.
I am, all right, I'll give you the story. So I ran a user test on some product pages, and our product pages start pretty much with customer testimonials and then features and benefits. So when I did this test, several users said that that was distracting to them, that they wanted features and benefits first and then any kind of testimonials after that, which, makes sense to me. So, but then to try and quantify that, I also ran an A/B test to see if by moving those components, would there be more conversions in terms of form fills for requesting a demo. Now, there wasn't a lot of lift with the A/B test. I'm still actually running it right now, but it's been about a month, and so there's no, like the earth hasn't moved in any direction. So I'm, in a quandary because I'm like, well, I'm doing what users said they wanted, but then, leaders are like, we want form fills. So how would you proceed?
All right, can I go first?
Please.
Because I'm going to copycat from you. You said very rightly. The interesting thing is, who are you testing for? So, because what you're just describing, that reminds me of a couple of tests, several tests we ran, which had these undecisive results, and then it turned out that there was a completely different reaction between new first arrivals on your website and returning users on your website. So, for instance, that is a very common situation that people who are the first arrivals on your website, actually, they want to understand the product, benefits, and so on and so forth. People who come back, who weren't quite sure, but now they come back, they want reconfirmation, they want security, they want some social proof on that. So typically, different things for different orders. You can speak to different audience. I would recommend, I don't know if you have such a lovely testing technology like DWO, but if you had, then you should try to dive into, let's say, the details of your audience, try to find out by market, by first users versus returning users, and you will find surprising differences. Some people might be reacting very positively and others very negatively. And altogether, you're looking at non-conclusive results. This would be my take on that. Mark, what do you think?
I like that. Let's see. Have you looked at that? Those two different audiences? That's a good take.
No, I have not, but that is a good suggestion.
Yeah, and I'll give one more quick one. That's fantastic. I think you have to ask. My question was going to be like, what are you actually trying to affect? So it sounds like it's a demo request. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and you're trying to increase the amount of demo requests from these product pages. Do you use any reverse IP technology on your website to see, like, what do you sell to, like larger B2B businesses, or I guess who do you sell to? Just so I have a sense of that.
So we're a software company, so yes, we sell to B2B.
Okay. Do you use like reverse IP lookup to see the types of companies, et cetera, like who are coming to these pages?
No, but that's another good suggestion. I mean, our whole testing group is very young, so
Okay.
done very few experiments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. To get a little deeper into knowing really who these users are is what really the gist.
Who are the users, and then where are they coming from? And then one thing we did at my past company, it wasn't product page, it was pricing page, but I would almost think about it's not product, but like with the pricing page, we told sales about any type of engagement, any type of pricing page visit was a marketing response that was flagged to sales if we could identify that visitor, right? So yeah, product pages, you probably don't want to do that because the intent is not as high. It's probably more medium intent versus high intent, and especially if it's a first time visit, right? The intent is probably lower. Granted, you're making this assumption, but what I'm getting at is, can you get a little more qualitative to see if like that is even the right offer on those product pages. Like for us, like actually on those product pages, a lot of the times what I found in past testing, and we're doing this testing right now on our website too, if you have this, but it's either like more a free assessment or sign up for free trial, which could then down the road lead to higher meeting rates, demo rates, because of the way you nurture that, right? So I think it kind of depends on it always depends on a few factors, but in this case, I think you might want to also like think about testing different offers that could potentially also then lead you to more demos through that offer within itself. Yeah, hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
And it comes with another pizza. That's also good. So it was worth coming on stage. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Please leave it's jan@vwo.com. Very easy to remember. Send them over and we'll be in touch. Okay, I think, Mark, we are kind of, people, how are we going time-wise? Because I think we're trying to make up the run over that we've done before.
Yes, and I think,
any more questions?
Because this is a live session, I would have really loved this conversation to continue, but I see that Emma is here, and before we move on to the two workshops that we have scheduled for the audience, we also have the quiz number 2, right? So we'll have to unwillingly just wrap up the session here itself. So yeah, and this will be a wrap.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Before leaving, it was really great seeing you. You didn't tell too much about what's going to happen tomorrow, so that leaves us with a lot of excitement. So we all go where we're going to see. We go to airmeet.com and see what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, just go there in the morning. Come to the event. It's around noon Eastern. But yeah, I dropped one hint. There's one of the 7 things I mentioned. If you pick that up, folks. So there's some new pricing and packaging, some new plans coming out. So yeah, there's some exciting stuff.
Definitely. I will definitely sign up for the free trial, by the way. Is there a free trial for Airmeet?
There's a free product, which is also getting a major update tomorrow. So I give you 2 I give you 2.
Lovely.
I gave you 2.
Super. Okay, I'm really looking forward to it. Mark, it was great having you. It was really fun. Sorry for the bad light and the shaky monitor here in the train station of Barcelona, but I'm really happy that my iPhone connection worked like a charm. Thanks again. Thank you, people, for having us, and over to you.